changing dramatically. All County Healthcare, Inc. still does it the old-fashioned way, where our nurses and healthcare professionals come into your home to service your medical needs, providing you the fastest and best care possible. For more information, call 954-717-7027. And remember, Medicare Home Care is covered by Part A of Medicare with no out-of-pocket cost to you. It's your decision, and only your decision, on what healthcare agency you use. Call today. All County Home Health Care, Inc. at 954-717-7027. License 200999096. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Amp2.tv presents You and Your Doctor, teaching you to live a longer and healthier life. Proudly sponsored by All County Healthcare, where people are the heart of our business. All County Healthcare is a Medicare certified agency where one call will service all your home care health needs. For more information, call 954-717-7027 or visit our website, allcountyhealthcare.com. Now, let's get informed to living a longer and healthier life. Here is your host for today's show.
Hello, South Florida and beyond, and welcome to the You and Your Doctor Living a Longer, Healthier Life show from remotely from sunny Boynton Beach. But I think my guest is in a sunnier spot because it looks even brighter than me. But I want to welcome back to the program Dr. David Moskowitz. He's a nephrologist, but you may remember him from the past. We talked a lot about his company, GenoMed. There was so much information from that show, I don't even think we got through all the questions. So I'm so glad he can join me again today. Dr. Moskowitz, looking great. How you doing there? Is that the sunlight? Are you on your porch there? Looking good.
No, I'm under intense fluorescent illumination in my own study.
Oh, it works good. It looks like almost like sunlight. So that is really good. I thought maybe you were enjoying this beautiful weather we're having in South Florida. Well, I'm sure you are. But like I said, I want to get right into it. You have a lot to talk about disease-wise, and you can really share some really great things with us. So again, I just want to welcome you to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me on.
All right, let's get right into it. Are you still working to make the world dialysis free by 2025? Isn't that what we kind of ended on last time? Is that still the plan?
That's still the plan. But it looks like, it'll have to take a backseat to surviving COVID-19 first. And turns out, just looking at what happened in China, that it's not impossible to deduce how to save us from COVID-19. And I'm happy to say, I had my own patients with COVID-19 finally, after watching everybody else in the world have them, and was able to prove that quercetin is the way to go with this disease.
Wow, sounds like you were ready. You were waiting. So share with us again that that last topic you just said. We're remote, so I may have missed it, and it sounded like it was in. But what's the name of that?
It starts out quer and then seat and then in. Quercetin, Quercetin, it's a coloring agent in food. It's orange, and in crystalline form, it's these needle-like crystals, and it's it's called a flavonoid, which means a color, a source of color in food. And it's present in many fruits and vegetables, like capers. Capers have the most of it, but it's also in kale and buckwheat. I mean, things that don't seem to have any relationship to each other. Red onions, grapes. So a curry is probably half. this flavonoid, this quercetin. Um, it's a pretty cool structure. It's a resonance structure, so electrons kind of flow around in a way that lets them absorb light, and so it absorbs some light, and then orange light bounces off. It absorbs everything but orange, and orange comes out. And it's you can't avoid it. I mean, everybody's been eating 100 milligrams a day of quercetin since they were children, and so it's eminently safe. It's cheap. It's if you want to eat more, it's an app. Um, or you can buy capsules of quercetin from any Whole Food store, and it looks like just increasing the usual dose a few fold, like from 100 milligrams a day to 500 milligrams a day, half a gram, is enough to prevent you getting sick from COVID-19 and also treating you if you have any symptoms. And the proof for it is a case report that I'm finishing up this week of an 18-year-old with asthma, really bad asthma, who was who had unusual features, making me think it was COVID-19. We're waiting for the confirmatory tests, but he had diarrhea, which is unusual for asthma, but typical of COVID-19. He had burning in his chest, which is typical for COVID-19. He almost died a week ago. And then, despite being on very high dose prednisone, steroids, which should have treated asthma, and then after 2 doses of quercetin, he started breathing better for the first time in a month, and we've tapered off his prednisone altogether, and now he's just on quercetin and feels completely back to normal.
Wow, that is I had read about this. I'm reading so many articles. I'm a journalist, as you know, so I'm really getting into a lot, probably more than I should. There's so much out there right now. And long story short, I'm a former chef as well, so I know a lot about flavonoids. And I had read this somewhere, and I think maybe I was emailing back and forth with you. I don't know if we were connecting here, but I had read this and I thought, wow, that is very interesting, and it occurs naturally in food. But this is fascinating that you're able to use it as a treatment, and thanks for explaining that, because that is really something. You've really taken us to another level, and then educating us on what can help us on a daily basis, but not only helping you with your patients. That is really neat.
Well, so there's some science behind it. It turns out that, and for a while, for the past month or so, maybe 2 months, I was the only guy, talking about mast cells and quercetin. But now there's a study coming out of McGill where they're planning to take COVID-19 patients in China and give them quercetin. So their results will come out, at some point in the future, maybe 6 months from now. But the science behind it is very cool, because COVID-19, like SARS-1 back in 2003, have essentially the same structure, like they're 80% identical, these viruses, the 2 SARS viruses. And they're similar to the bird flu, to MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome virus, and I think to the avian influenza virus, although I may have misspoken. But in any case, the SARS viruses are almost identical from the bat. These coronaviruses that are endemic in bats and have lived in bats for millions of years, and come out every once in a while to infect us. And um, the way they act, the viruses, is to infect um, nasal epithelial cells that happen to have this ACE2 receptor on it for the virus. And at some point, um, the the virus is sort of available in pieces um, to immune cells nearby. Uh, like macrophages can present uh, various epitopes of various pieces of the proteins that the virus is made of to nearby cells. And mast cells are the cells that are behind hives in the skin, and peanut allergies, and allergies to bee stings and wasp stings. And they're the cells that can kill you. I mean, if you get exposed to a peanut and you have a peanut allergy and you don't jab your EpiPen into your thigh right away, you can get tightness of your throat and inability to breathe, and you can actually die of anaphylaxis within minutes. So it's highly dangerous, and that's what COVID-19 is doing to maybe 1% of people who catch it. And what's happening is that the viral nuclear capsid protein has a very strong basic stretch of positively charged lysines towards the end of the protein. And then it has a hydrophobic greasy part of the protein further upstream near the other end of the protein, the N-terminus. And the combination of highly positively charged and greasy hydrophobic makes it a basic secretagogue like wasp venom or mastoperin or compound 4880. And these are like incredible molecules that cause mast cell degranulation. And the way they work is that they bind to this newly discovered receptor on the mast cell membrane called MRGPRX2, and which quercetin inhibits with high affinity, like micromolar. And so here's this thing that you can get in food that happens to have incredible specificity and high affinity for this receptor that plugs into the FC epsilon receptor 1, the receptor for IgE, the antibodies that actually bind to the peanuts or the wasp venom, mastoperin. Except that you don't need any IgE when it comes to this virus, because the nuclear capsid protein binds directly to this sort of side receptor that can kind of do a sneak attack and activate the IgE signaling system without the need for any IgE at all. So you essentially you get an anaphylactic reaction to your very first peanut. That's essentially what this virus is doing. And quercetin can block it.
That's good to know. I hope everyone's got their notebook out and taking some notes, because this is really in-depth coverage. No, it really is. I mean, I knew it would be we'd be learning a lot when having you back on, but I know people are going to ask me, so I just want to put it out. We have genomed.com on the screen. We know that's your website, but where are you practicing now? Because we kind of lost touch in, what was it, the last couple years. Are you still here in South Florida? If you'd like to tell us where you're at.
So I work for Cano Health, which has a very large patient population. They're the biggest primary care health plan in Florida now. They started out with Cuban patient population, and so I have to keep speaking Spanish or I lose my job. But fortunately, more and more people are speaking English, so that makes it easier for my lazy brain. But they couldn't be nicer. The people I work with give me Cuban coffee. every day. They are the nicest people, and the patients are the nicest people, the most grateful and respectful. And they, one of the ways they leave is by saying, "Que Dios te bendiga," may God bless you. I mean, it's just a lovely group to be associated with. And Cano Health is using hydroxychloroquine more for COVID-19, and so they're not as keyed into quercetin quite yet. So, but it's kind of like every man for himself at this point, and then we'll assess the outcomes of all these different approaches. I think for me, seeing this patient almost die a week ago, and I had been sweating over him for the previous 10 days. I mean, or just worrying about his prednisone dose and going up rather than down, which is what I wanted to do. And he was getting worse and worse anyway. And then to have him get better, back to baseline after only a couple doses of quercetin. And he's fine now off prednisone altogether. It was really miraculous. And I honestly have never seen anything like this in medicine before. It was nice to see creatinines come down with high-dose quinapril, like we spoke about a few years ago. But this was on the order of what must have happened in the 30s when people who had pneumonia and were sure to die of pneumonia, got penicillin for the first time and woke up the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, well, everything goes in cycles, right? So, yeah, this is a cycle to a new time and a new treatment. Let me ask you, because I'm just thinking as I'm listening, how is that dosed? Is that something that is taken in, by the mouth? Is it intravenous? This, and I'll butcher the flavonoid name, but if you'll just tell us again, quercetin.
Quercetin, yep, absolutely.
Almost.
Yeah, you got it. So the dose is, remains to be established. What I was using for this guy, because I had him on a gram a day, and he was doing poorly. So I bumped him up to a gram twice a day. It seems like a lot of people take it twice a day. I think maybe half a gram once a day might be a good place to start to try to prevent symptoms. And then if you get any symptoms, and the symptoms can be bizarre. You can have middle ear disease with this virus. You can have a sore throat. You can have nasal congestion. You can have polyps in your nose that basically make it impossible to smell and therefore to taste. It all starts as like a cold in your nasopharynx and even in your middle ear, and probably eustachian tubes are closed off by lymphoid tissue in your pharynx in the back of your throat. And then it goes from there apparently into your lungs. You can have diarrhea. It's not uncommon. This guy had diarrhea. Everywhere you have symptoms is where there are mast cells. And it looks like this virus either infects the mast cells directly or the mast cells are nearby other like type 2 alveolar pneumocytes, which definitely are known to get infected with this virus, nasal epithelial cells, and endothelial cells in the lungs, which cause disseminated intravascular coagulation, and the D dimers that people get once they're in the ICU and get put on ventilators. The heart fills up with eosinophils, and you get a viral myocarditis. It all starts from degranulation of the mast cells. and recruitment of other immune cells, and just release of all these cytokines, histamine, renin, angiotensin 2 production, all kinds of stuff. I mean, TNF alpha to make you feel terrible and have body aches and muscle aches and crushing fatigue and bone pain. I mean, it's a very, it's full of symptoms, headaches. The mast cell actually starts it all off.
Wow, yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something you don't want to get. I just wanted to ask you, I was reading a lot about you today, and how long have you been researching disease? Because I saw on the GenoMed website that you started, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, writing academically on this in 1993, but you probably were already studying disease long before that, right? Over 3 decades, diseases?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of good training. I mean, I had a Marshall scholarship to go to England. So after college, graduated summa in chemistry from Harvard College and got a Marshall to go to England, to Oxford. And so I got another degree in biochemistry there. And they taught biochemistry completely then in Harvard and American universities. The point at Oxford was you weren't taking classes like every week or two, even twice a semester. You would study for like 2 or 3 years, and then you'd take exams at the end of that period. And so you had to remember some facts, but it wasn't just a regurgitation of facts like at an American college. You actually had to be able to tell a story. You had to understand a system well enough that it made sense to you, and that you could reproduce the story of the biochemical system 2 years later or 3 years later, and that you'd keep refreshing your mind about it. And so I studied much harder, and it stuck better because it was a story instead of just a bunch of facts that you had to regurgitate on a quiz. And I was also encouraged to sort of go off on my own and not just automatically believe what the current dogma was. And so there were all these examples of people who had been thought crazy. I mean, when I was at Oxford in 1974 to 76, there was this guy named Mitchell who we didn't even hear about in biochem, who had been talking about the proton pump as a way of mitochondria making ATP. And so all we heard about was the guy from Penn, Britton Chance, and who had fancy equipment. And the guy who actually won the Nobel Prize was this guy who worked in his own lab and never got funded and never got respect.
Dr. Moskowitz, I don't want to interrupt. It's hard to believe. Go ahead. But we've already ripped through 30 minutes here, and I'd love to have you back on, though. If you're interested in coming back on in the future, I'd love to have you back on, and we can continue this.
It's great to be with you, David.
Well, thank you again. I mean, that was a very eye-opening conversation. I want to thank you again. Sure. If anyone wants to reach out, we can.
Want everybody.
Thank you again, and stay healthy, Dr. Moskowitz. We want to have you back on, and thank you for everything you do. You're a healthcare hero. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time on the You and Your Doctor Living a Longer and Healthier Life show.
Thank you for letting us share with you a longer and healthier lifestyle. If you have a doctor or are a doctor and wish to be on the show, call AMP2 TV at 866-244-5422, and we will put you on the air as soon as possible. Tune in next week for more information on living longer and having a healthier life.